I won't do this during the presentation. Don't worry. Oh, sorry.
Wednesdays 9 to 10 as he explores the elements that keeping you from realizing your full potential. It is time to break those chains of bondage. It is time to shake off what's been holding you back. The Full and Abundant Life program, 9 to 10 p.m. Okay, let me go here.
VFM 99.9, the clean fresh sound, and
So busy praying,
it's just 1 minute after 9 o'clock.
ain't got time.
It's time for us to present to you this evening's program, the Full and Abundant Life Radio program. And the Full and Abundant Life Radio program is hosted by Dr. Claudius Davis each and every Wednesday. To be a part of the program, the number to call 457-9997. That's 457-9997. You can send us a WhatsApp message at 457-9997 as well, or place a WhatsApp call. So without further ado, I'm not going to take any more time, but I'm going to turn you over to Dr. Claudius Davis. Dr. Davis, good night, and let me also say good night to you, Ben.
And it is certainly a privilege to be here tonight again with you. And to have Ben with us here tonight is certainly a privilege to
Hey, good night. How you doing?
experience that. And I'm trying to get this all squared away here.
I think you can change the layout of your screen.
How do I do that?
It's just at the bottom. It should be just at the bottom.
Okay, and do what?
There's different triangles or rectangle. Ah, there you have it. So just click on another one. I'm sure Ben, I will fall to the right. That's the one that will work.
Oh, okay.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Follow the instructions, man.
He's a tech genius.
Life can be quite simple, right? But anyway, tonight we certainly want to welcome all of our regular viewers and listeners, and especially for those of you who are in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we certainly will encourage you to express your thoughts and ideas. This is certainly an interactive program. We certainly want to acknowledge Samantha all the way from, I think it's Alabama, and she's already signed in on the Facebook link. It's certainly a privilege to have you here with us tonight. And of course, we have Ben Field, who is with us here tonight as well. Ben has been with us in the past, in the early days, and certainly he had drifted away, and now he's back again with us. And so
He pulled me back in.
you ever see that? Was it The Godfather? You know,
Yeah. Just when I'm out, they pull me back in.
Right. So that's what it is. But anyway, we want to, I want to focus this series on the book of Amos. And, he's referred to as the prophet of social justice, and rightly so. And the reason that I really want to focus on Amos, because I believe that his message really is a message to the church today. And so, because I think a lot of what is being said and a lot of the messages really ring through as to what we are experiencing in our own time. And so, so the challenge, I think, tonight is for, the church and God's people to begin to position themselves in such a way that they can become the catalyst of change and hope to a world that is basically drifting away. And so I'm not going to get involved too heavily with the introduction of the book of Amos. Of course, Amos was not a professional prophet in any way. He was simply a shepherd, a farmer who worked in the field. And it was from that vantage point that God called Amos, which means that he understood the struggle of the ordinary individual. And of course, Amos was from the south. Remember, as I said before in another lesson, that with the death of Solomon, the kingdom became split, and of course you had the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. And at this particular time of Amos, you had four of what I think are some of the best, well, maybe the golden years of Hebrew prophecy, because you had, on one hand, in the south, in Judah, you had Isaiah and Micah, and then on the north side of that, which is Israel and the north, you had Amos and Hosea. So these four guys really, in my mind, them, if you read their work, you'll see the power that they brought to their message, but also the description of the time, what was happening. And we'll try to go through some of these slowly, some of the passages. But as we go through these, Ben, I want us to make the application, because our life experience, I think, shapes who we are. I think that when you talk about our self-definition, our personality, it's nothing more than information that experiences that we have stored over time, and that information becomes the source of our identity, who we are. So if you go down the road of, say, mental health, for example, and you look at such things as, post-traumatic stress disorder, whether it be depression, anxiety, psychotic, whatever those illnesses are that we tend to define so well, it's all about how people begin to experience themselves and to experience the world. And in many cases, it's in a negative way. And so Amos, given his experience, I think that experience shaped him and certainly shaped his message and his level of sensitivity. So he was able to respond with a sense of urgency because of the level of exploitation. And when you think about the fact that between these two kings, Uzziah in the south and Jeroboam the second in the north, this was a period of prosperity. This was a time when Israel was, I would say, in terms of affluence, was equivalent to the days of Solomon. These two guys were, I would say, were great political, social leaders. Their strategies, what they did in terms of being able to lift that nation to the vantage point where they were, that the Israelites were beginning to attribute their prosperity and their material wealth to the fact that they were God's chosen people, and that they were blessed, and that they were untouchable, they were invulnerable. And I think to a great extent that many of us in our society tend to kind of have that kind of delusional notion that we are so blessed, we are a nation of God, and therefore we are untouchable. And so, and I think people outside of the United States kind of get this idea. They feel that, if you want to get rich, you come to the US. And that's why a lot of people are doing what they're doing in terms of making the tremendous sacrifices to come to the United States. Because as a matter of fact, some people in some parts of the Caribbean may think that somehow money is just falling from the sky, and they don't realize that Americans are just, many are struggling, and just there are many in the United States that probably don't have a place to live, to sleep tonight. There's a level of poverty here. But among the elite, those in the days of Amos, those who thought, because of the exploitation and the level of wealth that they had and the power that they had as a nation, both north and south, that this was certainly a time when they thought that whatever was happening to them was certainly approved by God, and that God certainly was the source of all of that. And Amos is going to say, the lion is raw, and he's going to say, look, if you don't ever lock God in a box. And I think that's one of the messages that we're going to be seeing tonight. But I want us to sort of look at a couple of passages in terms of, the sort of condition that existed. And so, Ben, I want to just maybe quote a passage that is in Amos chapter 3 and verse 8. And I will quote it from the Revised Version, Standard Version. It says, the lion has roared, who will not fear? The Lord God has spoken, who can but prophesy? And from Amos, you got to understand that Amos is looking at it from his perspective, that whenever you hear the roar of a lion, it means that the prey is already there. Basically, a lion will come to you it's going to sneak up, but whenever he lifts and you hear that roar, believe me, you're finished essentially. And so what Amos, the metaphor here is that God is at this point where there is no way out of it, that they're doomed, that they're going to be destroyed. And we know that the northern kingdom, I think it was like 722 BC, that they were taken into captivity. And the southern kingdom eventually was taken by Babylon. And I think it was 586 BC that they were in fact taken. But so what we're saying is that, based on what's happening around the globe, what's happening in the United States, sometimes I think we conclude by focusing so much on the political issues and the social issues that we tend to forget that God is not passive, that he is there, and in his own time, he will respond. And that is why, again and again, we have the message that today is a day of salvation, and therefore we need to do what we need to do to make things that when that day comes, certainly we will in fact be prepared. Ben, there's another passage, and I just quote these passages, read these passages in Amos chapter 7 and verse 15. He says, "And the Lord took me from following the flock, and the Lord said to me, go and prophesy to my people." In other words, Amos is from the south, and God is sending him to the north, and he's sending him with a message to the north. And sometimes I think when you compare that to the Great Commission that Jesus himself commissioned, and I think that this is a commission that the children of God, the church today, should begin to recognize the urgency. And I think it's strange that if you look at what's happening in our world today, you would think that the church would be a little more aggressive, sensing the urgency of where we are in terms of, they coming together in terms of pooling their resources together in order to make an impact. But instead, I think we continue to be divisive. We continue to fight each other internally, and we tend to overlook that there's this greater issue that is in fact happening. So Ben, while I review some of this on the Facebook page, if you have any comment, feel free to go ahead and do that. Deborah, is certainly privileged to have you with us here tonight. Nadine, Stephanie, Jean, Linda, it's great to see you all here tonight. Mayan and Samantha. So these are, and you all can basically, those of you on the Facebook page certainly can express your thoughts, and I'll kind of glance at them from time to time. And of course, Kamal would sort of monitor the WhatsApp situation there in St. Vincent, and the phone calls, should you all have any passages that you wish to express. Now, there's a passage in 1 Corinthians chapter 9 and verse 16 that says, "If I proclaim the gospel, this gives me no ground for boasting, for I am under obligation." And the obligation is laid upon me. Paul is simply saying that out of necessity, I have no excuse, that I'm not doing this simply because whatever it is. He says that necessity is laid upon me, and therefore I have no choice but to preach the gospel. And I think, and then he says, woe is me if I do not proclaim the gospel. And of course, that is Paul's conviction. That's how he felt about that. But I believe that every true believer ought to feel this kind of obligation, that we have an obligation because Jesus did described us as being the light of the world, if you recall that. He said we are the salt of the earth. And as a result of that, it means that we ought to be able to bring light where there is darkness. And certainly, some of us, we criticize a lot. We get very angry at what's happening in our world today, socially, a lot of the social political situation that we see. But I think the answer to that is to bring an alternative, a genuine, authentic alternative that folks can stop, listen, and be attracted to. And I think that this is kind of where I think that the message of Amos is also the message for us today. So that the church is we sometimes have a way of dividing up ourselves. We talk about the patriarchal system, we talk about the Mosaic system, and we talk about the Christian age, as though somehow it's like three separate systems. I'm here to tell you there's only one system. And that one system is that God is the head honcho, and that he has always been that way, and that he needs faith and obedience. Nothing has changed. His laws have always been there. And so we have to begin to understand what our responsibilities are and how we're going to begin to fit in with all of this. And Ben, I hope I'm not sort of going too far way out here, but let me just read one more passage in terms of because I'm talking about the urgency that we are in terms of what we need to do. And this is in Ezekiel chapter 12, verse 5. It says, whether they hear or refuse to hear, for they are a rebellious house, they shall know that there has been a prophet among them. And that's a very, very powerful statement that Ezekiel is simply saying, it doesn't matter. They're going to know at the end of the day that the prophet, and as I wonder today, if you look at your home, if you look at your personal life, can the people around you be convinced, at least, I may not share your view, I may not necessarily agree with what you're saying, but I do know what you stand for. I can see your character, I can see your integrity, I can see your belief system. It is very clear. And I think this is where I think we are missing the point or the agenda in terms of us making a statement, being responsible enough to take some ownership. Because if God has blessed you and he has commissioned you, then you do have the responsibility to honor that and to bring some sort of dividend to him simply because of his investment. So if you think about what Jesus did on the cross, I mean, he died, he sacrificed, but there's a reason for that. And the reason is that you can become, join with him, become a partner with him, and begin to make a difference. And so my thing is to begin to start from a small level. Why don't you start with your home, for example, in your relationship, in your marriage? It's one thing to think about those people out there, but I think if we can start with our own children, start with our own family, our own situation, to look internally within ourselves and to say, look, I am the light of the world. Jesus is in residency in me. And now I am going to make whatever contact, whatever relationship I have that are meaningful to me, I am going to have an impact on that. And I think if we can all develop that kind of urgency and become that mission minded to understand that God's redemption is in fact for a purpose, we ought to become the catalyst. In other words, we ought to become the channel of his grace. And part of that is to recognize the call and the message and the urgency and be responsible enough to be able to duplicate that. And so tonight, that's kind of where I really want us to begin to have some discussion. And for those of you who are on the Facebook page, certainly you can interact there. And for those of you in St. Vincent and Grenadines, certainly you can use the WhatsApp link, or you can use the phone and share your thoughts and certainly your ideas. I believe that Jesus, he's left us many examples. And so in John chapter 9, and John, uh, um, Ben, feel free to, if you have any thoughts or passages,
Oh, no, I'm just kind of taking it in and
right.
processing, and I'm trying to make sure I'm honing in on exactly you're I feel like you're zooming down into the level of the practical, and
Right. That's what Amos was. I mean, that
yeah,
the whole
I
idea of Amos is to be able to, because remember the northern kingdom, because they were so involved in sort of the artificial things,
yeah,
usually for
idolatry, and yeah,
them, even their religion was so sophisticated,
yeah,
everything, and they forgot that God wasn't there.
yeah,
And so for me, I think the restoration is about us becoming more, take some sense of responsibility, where we can begin to say, where there are privileges, there are responsibilities. Now, I've been blessed, and how am I going to now demonstrate that blessing in making a difference in the lives of others?
right,
And all I'm saying tonight is, why don't we start at a smaller level? Start with those people that are significant to you. Start in your own homes. Start in your own community. Wherever you are in your own neighborhood, start in those small areas and begin to communicate what God wants you to communicate. Now, in John chapter 9 and verse 5, it says, we must work the work of him who sent me while it is day. And then he says, night is coming when no one can work. I mean, that's Jesus, acknowledging that. And he's saying to us, there ought to be a sense of urgency. Yes, we see the world is changing. We see things are going in a wrong direction. The question then becomes, what am I doing? What's my contribution as an individual? I always say you got to know your position, but you also ought to play your position. It's one thing in saying, this is who I am, and this is the blessings that I have, and these are the talents that I have, and God continues to bless me. Well, what are you doing with it? How do you demonstrate that? Because at the end of the day, God is blessing, but he's also watching, and he's cheering us on at the same time. And so he's given us, he gives us the Holy Spirit. He's given us everything that we need to equip us in order to be successful, not necessarily successful to amass the world's wealth, but rather to be successful in terms of communicating what it truly means to be human.
well, that reminds me of was
Yeah,
it
go ahead.
James 2, where where you're talking about you show me, I'll show you. You show me your I don't want to mess it up, but it's you show
But
me your faith by
by
your
what?
I'll
Yeah,
show you my faith by my works, and
right.
talking about whether it's a genuine, real, or dead faith. That's on the horizontal. That's between men. You show me, I'll show you. That's not that's assuming that you had that you're talking to believers, right? It's assuming you're talking in a community of faith. So it's a powerful statement saying what you do is not going to save you, but if you want to say you have a genuine faith, what you should be doing is doing this. You should be doing things, because if it's real, you're going to do what's important to you. So that's where you know you think you can say faith, yeah, but the demons believe and they shudder. They have a knowledge, they have a working knowledge where they do believe. They're like, yeah, okay, I know Jesus exists, but they don't have a faith that acts out of that grace that you were given, and then seeks to continue in gratitude with what you have been given. So you can't just give mouth service, hide in a corner and do nothing. Um, I think it goes to Revelation too. It goes to a few places, but in the Gospels, when you hear about, depart from me, I never knew you, and they say, well, wait, didn't I? And he's the shocking thing for me for that is I never knew you. It wasn't even like I knew you, then I didn't know you, then you know you went away and you came back again. No, it's I never knew you. So it kind of shows that that faith wasn't a that it was a dead faith. It wasn't a it was a maybe an intellectual acknowledgement of reality. That's one way of believing, but the kind of belief I think you're honing in on is Amos is a guy who heard words from God and then went and spoke right to the king. And some of the things he said were a little interesting. I think if you get in the middle of the book, it's the kind of things that would get you put to death real fast.
Yeah. But when he outlined, and that's something we're going to see as we go through the study, you know, where the businessmen were actually rigging their scales.
Yeah.
The judges themselves were taking bribes in
Right.
order to twist the laws in order to. I mean, there's one illustration where, and we'll come to that at some point, where Amos says, "Look, it is so bad that a father and a son
Yeah.
would be using the same prostitute."
Yeah.
And not only were they using the same prostitute, but they were using it in the temple. Not only were they using it in the temple, they were going in the temple, but the court that they had taken from the farmer who couldn't pay, they had taken the blanket from the farmer and were using the blanket to spread in the temple in order for the son and the father to not have intimacy with the prostitute.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's the kind of message that sort of Amos was bringing and said, look, this is sick.
You don't hear a lot of that from a pulpit, right? It's
Yeah.
like let's turn to Amos. Let's speak about
This is horrible. How could this happen? Here's a group of people. Here's what you have
Yeah.
to understand. This is a group of people that God took out of bondage in Egypt.
Yeah.
Miraculously, brought them to the Red Sea.
Yeah.
Fed them in the wilderness, brought them into this land, and here they are. In order for them to express a gratitude in decency, righteousness, here you have a situation, and think about how appalling, think about how angry and how incensed and sick Amos must have felt in terms of actually taking the time out to mirror back to them what they were in fact doing. And they were doing this in some of the major shrines, such as Bathsheba, where it was a temple that was there in Bethel. Some of these famous places that these acts were actually happening. And then you ask yourself, how does this translate over into our situation, into the culture where we are in the United States, into the culture where we are in St. Vincent and the Grenadines?
Seems nothing's new.
You look at the level of pornography then.
Yeah.
Where our technology should have been to bring us to a place of enrichment. Our technology is of the such where, an 8-year-old kid could be watching pornography on the iPhone and the iPad.
Yeah.
The ugliness. So my point is, where is the Amos? Where is the Ezekiel who says, look, they will know, no matter what it is, they'll know that a prophet is among them. And so, I think the way that the world has silenced us to where we have lost our conviction, we're basically, we're trying to get along in order to, there's a phrase, the way you put it, get along to, I forget how they actually
go along to get along to go along. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, exactly. We go along in order to get along. And that's much of what you're seeing is happening. And so that's why I want to take us back to Amos, because Amos is simply saying, I am not willing to do this. I am here to bring a message because I am sent by God. I was taken from my job. I was taken from the countryside. I was taken from farming. I was taken from what I was doing. And God sent me with a message. And this is an urgent message. And the urgent message is, where there are responsibilities, there are privileges. And never put God in a box. Because the moment you put God in a box, you'll find yourself in that box with no exit. And I believe that, Ben, that America, the United States right now, I think is on a collision course with God. I really do.
Well, it's been for a while.
And so I don't care who you put in the White House. Okay.
Yeah, it's not going to fix it.
No, it can't. I think it's going to take us individually. And it's going to be, this is not a short term fix, obviously, because you're talking about cultivating a generation if Christ is going to be gracious enough to hold himself back a little bit and give us more time
Yeah.
because he can come at any moment, and this may well be the moment. But I'm saying that we need to, despite that, we still need to be able to make our day, take one day at a time, but to make that day special. And that specialness is to be able to communicate the unadulterated gospel in a positive way by modeling it, not just preaching, but modeling it to others so that they can see. I want to spend a little time, spark a little bit, and First Peter chapter 2 and verse 9, because this passage tells us who we truly are if we have been redeemed, if we are in Christ, if we are in partnership with him. It tells us, and here's what it says. Peter chapter 2 and verse 9 says, but you are a chosen race. And then it says, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's own people. And then he concludes after saying all of that. Here's the catch here. He says, in order that you may proclaim the mighty acts of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. That to me is the essence of Christianity. This is the essence of Christian education. It's for us to be able to get people to begin to celebrate who they are, but also to be able to match that with the commission that is to be able to become the light of the world. And I think we all can agree when you look at what's happening in our social environment, our culture, that there's a whole lot of darkness.
Well, the fabric is just, coming unwound, and people who don't, see eye to eye both agree on that. There was a social consciousness that, maybe even had a veneer on the surface of having some level of kind of holiness, but it's the animosity has increased to the point where now people are wishing death and sickness on each other. They are, acting out in violence against each other. It's just they're trying to destroy each other rather than even just have disagreements and arguments. It's just reached a hostility that I think evidences that we've been given over in some ways to our own our own collective national excess, if you will.
Right. And so, Ben, what I try to do in light of this darkness is to be able to bring something optimistic, something positive.
Yeah.
And the positive is that we don't need to resign ourselves to hopelessness and failure. We can begin to celebrate who we are in terms of that relationship. And once we begin to celebrate that, that becomes the foundation for us to be able to look beyond the darkness, to look beyond that and say, look, I will become the catalyst of this hope. I will become the light in a small way. Because, Jesus did remind us, he said, not many are going to find the way. Few there be that find it.
Yeah.
So we don't need to be caught up in numbers and massness. We
not
have
at all.
to begin to think about the individual contribution that we can make. And the best way to start is, if you're a grandmother tonight, is to say, what can I contribute to my grandchildren? How can I nurture those children to make them stronger, to prepare them to be a good citizen, to prepare them so that they can create a life for themselves where the values that I cherish can become their value, and hopefully pass on to their children. And of course, we can't say, well, Christ is going to come tomorrow. So, and I think sometimes we kind of reason that way. But yes, he may. But in the meantime, though, we have a responsibility because we only have one day and we can make the best of that. And so, again, I want to go back and read the First Peter chapter 2 and verse 9, because I think it's important for us to understand.
Yeah, I was actually going to say, because you have,
Yeah, go ahead.
it says you are a chosen people, right? And that's indicating control. God is ultimately in control, and that's really a big, huge source of hope in that he has made the decision to bring you into the narrow way and to cause it to happen. So it's funny because you're going and sharing it with someone else is almost revealing to them that he has it's strange. We don't know we don't know God's decisions ultimately on those on everyone we speak to, right? But it says many are called, few are chosen.
Right.
So it's interesting how that same how consistent it is. Like the invite's going out. It's for everybody, but how do you like you said, how do you just allow a glimmering light to be there? Because it can be done. I mean, Noah kept his family. There wasn't much left there. Yeah, Noah found a way to keep it together and still, I mean, look, he's a light to this day, as an example of a very flawed person who God gave grace to, which is what we hope for all of us.
And that's the message that I want us to bring, because I want us to understand that Amos spoke to the church then. And I'm saying that that same church is part of who we are today.
Mm-hmm.
And so his message becomes our message today, because we are talking about God's own people. And so you have to ask yourself, which group am I in? Follow? Can I affirm tonight that I am a chosen race? Can I say that? And can you then extend that to say that, as I think it was Joshua who said, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. So you have to be able to affirm, not just in a selfish way by saying, I am, but you have to begin to think in terms of we. And when you begin to think of we, you're not thinking about we the Republicans or we the Democrats. You're thinking about we, that is me and my spouse and my 6 little children. We are the chosen. And now we are going to, not chosen in the sense of being prideful, but in order as a base. In other words, we are now going to go to this other family over here and help them to be able to affirm the same kind of a statement.
Right. I think it says that in Romans too, is that God makes these decisions that he might demonstrate his rich mercy and abundant grace. And, that in and of itself, it's like, if you've been forgiven much, shouldn't you have gratitude for the same? It's like when Jesus healed the 10, and how many come back, right?
Right.
If you truly feel it, you are going to live and express it. I mean, you should definitely see it in the home. Even if no one else listens to you, people in your own house should be able to testify to the sincerity of your faith and that you walk in it and you believe it. And but I think that children see hypocrisy. I learned from being a father.
Yeah.
Boy, do they sniff it out. They are looking for the moment that they can see in you that you've been inconsistent. so you also have to teach them grace. But but think about it. I mean, if you're not, this is why spiritual leadership has family qualifications. If you can't do it with in your little circle that God has given you, blessed you with, well, then maybe you have growing to do. We'll start there, and maybe at the same time you got to take yourself down a notch.
Well, but Ben, that's where I think Jesus, with this example that he set, where he took a basin with water kneel and begin to
Right.
wash the feet of his disciples. Because he was saying to us, hey, we have to have this kind of humbleness where we're going to accept our own vulnerabilities and then be able to empower others so that we all stand in need of grace. But the thing is, you don't have that grace. You say, thank you, Lord, for the grace. But at the same time, you look for opportunities that you can share it with others. And all I'm saying, I was doing an assessment today, and I was doing the assessment, and I was trying to write it up afterwards. And when I was trying to look at the basis for post traumatic stress disorder, and it occurred to me while I was doing that there are different levels of post traumatic stress disorder. For example, a person may be in the war and they may experience something, an incident, and it bothers them. So that's one level of it.
Yeah.
But
Deep disturbance of something you've observed.
right.
Yeah.
But I want you to now see another aspect of it, where this is a 4-year-old child, 4-year-old boy who has been sodomized by a grandfather, and that happens to him till he is about 11 years old. And then at the same time, he is living in a home where mom and dad are drug addicts and they're always fighting. There's a high level of domestic violence that is happening until this young man gets to be about 14, where he can now take some action, such as running away, packing a gun,
Yeah.
what he's doing.
Yeah.
Now he's in a facility where he's looking at 30 years to life, basically. And then now you're sitting with this person and you begin to understand when he says, I have post-traumatic, then you begin to understand that there's a difference, isn't it? His entire life has been a living nightmare. And so you begin to see how his whole being is wired in this hopelessness, this rage and anger, this hyper vigilant about him, that now it becomes totally difficult for him to even begin to honor his humanity. And how do you say to a person like that you created in the image of God and that there's still a piece of God in you? And how do you bring that out? Well,
I don't know. I don't know that we can. I think it takes miraculous intervention on the part of Christ, and then we could, of course, minister, right?
Right.
But does us ministering in itself have the changing power to heal that kind of evil? I would say no. We are just tools
But
to
Ben,
help.
Ben, what if we take the stance though? What if we take the stance that I am okay, I am different, and you're broken? Follow?
Yeah.
That person already knows that.
Right.
That's why they've been self-destructing in the first
place. Right. They're going to let everyone know exactly.
Right. So my question then is, how do I bring my grace to the situation? Use my grace to enable this person to see that there is still God in them, that there is still that goodness there. And how can we now forge a relationship? That is why I think when you look at the illustration of Jesus, when he got down there and began to wash the feet of the disciples, he stripped away from himself his uniqueness and his perfection, and now he's at the same level with them. And I think that this is what I think we need in our homes. This is what we need in our churches, where our so-called leaders can begin to understand where we're coming from, how damaged we may be, and what it would take in terms of the healing process. Nurture that and to spend the time to make that plant become what you want it to be. Because see, we have to have the image of what we want. And the image of what we want is the Christ-like image. And how much are we willing to invest in that? How much time are we willing to invest to make that happen? And to me, that is
We
the.
have a caller.
Go ahead, caller.
Yeah, how you doing, man? Blessed greetings and good night.
Good night.
Yeah, let me load on my radio a little bit. Hold on, I mean, yeah, I was listening to, this is my second time call when you're there.
Mm-hmm.
But I can understand what you try to say, but the other brother said, when you call us, you are choosing, and then the one who calls will answer to the prayer and the blessing and receive the blessing of the Almighty. Because, mankind separate themselves from being loved. A whole heap of our people. And that's why you see so many problem, corruption, because they don't seek the men who give them life. And that's why we having all this problem in the world today. So if there was really say, well, then go to the man who give them life for love, because he's love, he's strength, and he's the creator of all things and creation. And if they worship him, I mean, I think all of they are go through this kind of situation, like, a brother going to go fight another brother, pull a gun after the other one, and this kind of, brutalize each other. They would have that love in their heart. But you see, as I said, many are called if you are chosen, because the one who chosen will understood and know the difference than the one who not chosen. So you're always going to be a problem, because once wickedness, Lucifer depend on wickedness are going to create. So keep on going, until our people change themselves from wickedness. Are we going to keep on finding it if they not change and give God thanks for life and for love and ask for blessing? And that's how I see it, because I understand you try to help others, which a while I try to do the same thing, manifest to the youth them amongst them who will listen, and you got them who will not listen. So them who will listen to me, I will speak to them the right way and try to help them out in the right direction. But them who will not listen, what should I do to them? I just leave them, I'm not want to see them go by the wayside and fall and do wickedness. But, as I say, it's two road of life, and some will be understood and some will choose the way of righteousness and some will not. And then who make up their mind to choose the way of wickedness. How can you change them?
Well,
So
it's
that's
funny.
go through all this from beginning, you know. Prophecy, keep on prophesying truth and right all the time. But mankind decide to be, well, me not say each and every one, but mankind decide to be different. So my word is to you, so I listen what you're saying. I know you're trying the best, just so I doing my best myself too. I'm not a Christian, but I believe in the Creator. And I give thanks on each and every moment, every minute I can give him thanks. Because without him, I couldn't even be here for you hear my voice on the radio station. Come to a lot of roughness too. But he never give me up and me not give him up either. So my people, them need to just get themselves together and love the Almighty. If you can't read or whatever, just call upon him and he will be right there. That's all I can say to you, man. Just do your work so you're doing. And what can we do? Just give thanks to the Creator. So
Thanks.
what you doing otherwise?
Thanks for the contribution tonight, and certainly I
And what's your name, ma'am? Can I ask your name?
Claudius.
Okay. So
And
you in St. Vincent?
yeah.
Well, I know you have to be in St. Vincent. I know there's a connection, but on your radio station, you call from overseas, and so you're right in St. Vincent, yeah.
No, no, no. I'm in New York.
Oh, New York.
I'm in New York.
Wow.
And
Big up.
Bennett also is in New York.
I had a brother up there and some friends up there, man. Big up yourself.
Okay. And so you're in SVG then, right?
Yeah. I used to be in Orlando a while, but I'm in St. Vincent now for a little while anyhow.
Okay. Then share the message. since you're there.
Man, I'm always going to do that. Be honest with you, you know, especially you, them who can understand and listen. As they say, you got some stiff-necked one, then, and try to be disobedient, But we got to put up a fight with them, And the fight we're going to fight is a spiritual fight I fighting with them because I don't want to see them go astray, But if you can't change them, what you going to do? You have to leave them,
Right. Well,
and let the Almighty
John
God handle them
says,
because
shake the dust off and move on. So, we have
huh?
precedent. The Bible clearly says we ought not to cast our pearls before swine. So, and John says we ought to shake the dust off and move on. But all I'm saying is,
Okay.
let's make
So,
sure that we do a good, demonstrate to others rather than being overly critical, rather, because people are hurting a lot. As a matter of fact, something just popped up on my phone a while ago where an
yeah.
MS gang, a person, was just sentenced to 55 years in jail. Now, this is a young person, 55 years in jail.
But majority of the time, excuse my language, but majority of the time is there who out there, you know what I'm saying, doing the things that they should not be doing. Because of what? They're not giving thanks, then rise up, then go to bed and don't give thanks to the man who give them life. So, and it's all about material things. So then create themselves to be like, someone like not human being, because human being not supposed to react them kind of way they amongst each other. We're supposed to love each other and help each other. That's the way the Almighty create us to be. But mankind create themselves to be divine, separate themselves because some want all of this and some want little of this and some want, But if we was come together, come on, man, watch a world we live in that amongst each other, that no one have to worry about no problem amongst.
Our time is running out, so I truly want to thank you for your contribution tonight. And certainly, I have to agree with you that, I think the way that we have allowed material things to take the precedence in our life, we want a good home, we want cars, we want this, and we want that. But I think we have to step back and begin to focus that Christ is the center of everything. He clearly says, without me you can do nothing. So we have to have something to anchor us. We have to have something to hold us. And I think in many instances we have failed our children. We have failed, as an individual, as a husband, as a wife, as a mother. We have failed. And so the consequence of this is showing up in terms of our children. And so all I'm saying to us is we need to step back. We need to take a hard look and to understand that God engineered us. He created us for a purpose. And that purpose is to begin to shine and allow Him, His Spirit, to dwell in us so that we can have an impact with others as well. But I certainly want to thank you for your comment and your observations. And I hope that there in SVG, in St. Vincent, that you're going to do everything that you can to encourage the young people there. And of course, there's some who aren't going to listen. But you know what? Out of every 10 door you knock, I'm sure there's going to be at least 2 people who are willing to listen. And that's all you can do is to find those few who are willing to to listen and to spend quality time with them and to offer them the alternative so that they can move forward. Ben, go ahead.
It just reminded me of a metaphor that I heard, and I didn't make this up. I heard it from somewhere, but I think a theologian in the past said it. It was, you were talking about being a light to these dark places, and then I agree with the caller that we have the ability to become straight animals, not even human, in our minds. We have the capacity to degrade down to the level of teeth and claws, but I did hear a quote that really struck me, and that's that the gospel is like the sun. It's like the sun shining down and beating down on the earth, and the same sun that will melt wax will harden clay. So somebody hearing the gospel, hearing of Christ, one person will be softened by it. Another person, the same light, the same heat, the same exposure to his goodness is going to actually harden them and push them away. And yes, you shouldn't You should be hopeful, but you also shouldn't waste your efforts either. Keeping that in mind, that God has the power to soften who he will, and maybe this is not his time for this person, maybe later. You don't know. You move on, you come back when if he gives you opportunity, Um, other than that, you'll start kicking yourself and wondering if I should have said something different, if I could have done, you know, we do our part, but God does his too, right? And he will harden some and he will soften others. And it's the same gospel. It's the same light. And I thought that was interesting. That hit me. I'm like, wow, all right. And it's like human hearts, they get calloused over or they get softened like flesh.
Yeah, Deborah sent us a text here on the Facebook page, and it says, if we take the stand about who we are as children of and minister to others, we will make a change. And I think the reason is because we are modernized God, and the church has become part of the world, and we do things that are of the world, and we fear man instead of God, and the truth will always stand and make a difference. If we say things like God is love and he is, but he will punish us if we don't do what he wants us, especially as ministers, I guess, youth and so on. And then there's another piece here. She says, there is an example of someone who we can minister to, help him to see the beauty of God and how he can serve others by giving his life to God and just believe and obey. I'm not sure that second part might be to the an encouragement to the person who called.
Oh, I see.
And he can certainly be a catalyst of the grace of God. So that's Deborah's take. But she also is saying that the church has become so modernized that we've lost the power because we're trying to fit in the world.
Oh, I agree.
And as a result of that, and I think that's what Amos was dealing with, is that they become so worldly.
Yeah.
That they had a lot of religious activities, except God wasn't present. And I think in a lot of our religious organizations, on any given week, God is absent from that because of what's happening. And I think it's something that we need to be very careful about.
Yeah.
So I'm saying then to us that the message of Amos is a very powerful message. And it's a message about justice. And we're going to hear a lot about, the exploitation of the weak, the level of corruption in government in that day, the level of corruption within the church among the priests and the prophets, that they will corrupt themselves. Every aspect of life in Israel was corrupt. And Amos came from the south with a message and said, look, the lion has roared. And of course, 722 BC came, and they were taken into captivity. And down south, as brilliant as Isaiah was and Micah was, these were brilliant prophets who preached, some of the most profound messages. But yet Israel, Judah, was taken into captivity 586 BC into Babylon.
Yeah.
And so we have to understand here, we're not going to make massive change. All I'm saying to us is just secure your home, secure your base, and do the best that you can as a wife, as a grandmother, as a husband, as a brother. Do the best that you can so that you live, so that the world can see that Christ is within you. And not only that, but you can affirm that greater is he that is in you than he that is in the world.
Yeah.
And no matter what the world throw at me, I am going to emerge victorious. I am still going to stand because God is with me and we're collaborating together. And that's the goal. And for me and my family, we are solid. And that's the message we want to bring home tonight. It's for you to be able, wherever you are tonight in St. Vincent or wherever you listen to the program, be able to say that with my family, we are secure and that God is going to be the head and we are going to be able to stem the tide. Yes, things are bad There's a lot of storms everywhere, but guess what? With Christ, we are going to emerge victorious. And I think if we can hammer that home and make it a practical reality, I think that we can, many homes can come out of this even stronger despite the chaos that we're seeing in our world today. Unfortunately, Isaiah wasn't as successful, Amos wasn't as successful because those two nations still went into, because they didn't listen. And I wonder tonight whether or not, Ben, America is listening. I wonder tonight whether St. Vincent and the Grenadines are in fact listening.
Hmm.
And I wonder if they are listening, who are they listening to? You know, where are they turning? Is it to CNN or Fox TV? You know, who are you listening to? And it makes a lot of difference tonight. And all I'm saying to us is, Jesus said, the words that I have spoken, the same shall judge you in the last day. He says, I am the way of life. I am the truth. I am everything. And Peter puts it well when he says, there is no other name given among men whereby we can be saved. And that's the message, I think, that the church needs to be moving forward in a positive way. And so, Ben, I think I'm going to give you the last word here.
Oh, no, I think we're out of time. I think that was a good way to end it.
Well, I think he's gonna. I think Kamal is falling asleep, so we can go on a couple more minutes.
Why you keep saying that, man? I'm always here listening to
He's
you.
awake and attentive.
Yeah, I'm just testing you. But tonight, you know, the message, Ben, is really simple, and the simple thing is for us individually to make a commitment that despite what's happening out there, I am going to anchor down and I'm going to hold my family and my little area that I work in, that I'm going to make sure that I be the very best that I can be in that area so that people will know that there was a Claudius, that there was a person who was different, and hold the ground. And that's what Ezekiel said. They will know that there was a prophet, no matter what happened, but they will know that there was a prophet. And so that certainly is the message tonight. And Kamal, I truly thank you for your graciousness. And I want to thank Keitha, Deborah, and all those wonderful people on the Facebook link was tuning in tonight, and Stephanie and Jean and Mayan and Samantha all the way in Alabama. Samantha always says, I'm in Alabama. Okay. So Samantha, I'm in New York. Okay. So it's certainly a privilege to have you with us here tonight. And oh, by the way, I want to mention the Caribbean Lectureship. The Caribbean Lectureship is going to be July the 13th, I think through the 16th, somewhere around there. And it's going to be held in Barbados this year. So for those of you who this might be a good time for you to get away and make your plans and head to it's going to be in the it's going to be housed in the Hilton Hotel in Bridgetown, Barbados. And certainly we want to remind you about that Caribbean Lectureship in July the 13th. So get ready, get your ticket. Let's head there. Ben, thank you so much tonight for your contribution.
Oh, thank you.
And thank you, Kamal, for your patience. And I know that we went over a couple of minutes. God bless. Bye-bye.
No problem, no problem. Well, thank you guys for certainly being here this evening. Folks, you were listening to the Full and Abundant Life radio program, which is aired each and every Wednesday from 9 until 10 right here on the WFM. I want to thank Dr. Claudius Davis. Also, Ben, I want to thank you for being here this evening as well. And God's willing, do join them again next Wednesday, same time, same place for another Full and Abundant Live radio program here on WFM. We've got just about 4 minutes after 10 o'clock, and here I'm also going to be bidding you goodbye for another Wednesday.